and welcome to Faith, Final Drafts, and the F Word. I'm Darla Phillips, a host and producer, along with fellow screenwriters Sarah Hopkins and Rebecca Williams-Spindler. Join us as we share our experiences navigating careers in film and television. Add in the twist that we're women of faith, entering into life's second season, and you might find yourself mumbling under your breath. Good luck with that, ladies. Follow along for some guaranteed laughs, a cry or two, and some valuable screenwriting and industry perspective. Anyone with a dream will enjoy this podcast video. Hope you join in. And remember, we gotta enjoy the journey.
Well, hello everyone. We are back again with another episode of Faith, Final Drafts, and the F Word. Hello. We're keeping warm here on an almost October day in Wisconsin.
We went for a walk. I was like, I need a jacket.
Yeah. Leaves are just starting to turn in fall up here.
But I love fall. Fall is my favorite.
Okay, so we'll start off things with our 3 Fs, like we always do. So,
All right, I will start with Faith. So my F word is my daughter's name is Faith, and I know I've shared this before, and she is a new freshman at college. And that, as a mama of faith in 2 different realms, has been tricky for me, but it's been really cool to watch her launch, and we're so proud of her. And I think one of the things that's hard is, especially when you raise your child up and they go off, they launch, they do the thing, you always kind of like secretly hope that, that's going to kind of manifest in their life in certain ways. And she's a lot like her mother right now. But I know that God is there. God is there with her, and He's protecting her. And it's one of those things where you have to hang on loosely. So I'm totally relying on my faith that my faith is going to be just fine in college. And we're really excited for it. So empty nester. Here we go.
Yes.
And newly husband retired.
Yes.
Yoo-hoo.
So many. I need so much faith.
I need a rubber room.
So I'll take the next one, Final Drafts. I wish I was in a final draft, but I'm not. So I'm still kind of reworking one of my holiday projects. I got some feedback on it, which we will talk about today, how to deal with notes. So hopefully soon I can reach the final draft.
Except for, but I have to say you had like 3 final drafts for your book,
for my ghostwriting
yes,
projects.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not like she hasn't been working hard.
Yes.
So yes, I've crossed the finish line with 3 of my ghostwriting projects, so I feel pretty good about that. And
yes,
now
awesome.
I can kind of turn the corner and concentrate on my own stuff for a few months. Yeah.
So frustration. Okay, there's so many things.
Yeah.
Many. I'm trying to think. For me, I think the frustration that I've had over the summer is having the story and not being able to apply myself fully to it. And every summer I'm learning. I go through this every summer. I just need to let go and just be like, who cares? Let my brain go free and not be frustrated that I can't quite get to that 3rd draft of what I'm working on. So now that the summer kind of wrapped up, I think that's the frustration. I think I'm going to be able to fully do it.
Yeah.
There's still things that kind of interrupt, but they're all good things. And so it just goes back to the balance.
Unless you've got like a hard and fast deadline that's put upon you by someone who's waiting for your work. We make our own deadlines.
Yes, yeah.
And sometimes we don't meet those deadlines. Like I had some mega anxiety building up because I set my own deadline, which is like 24 hours from now, and I know that's not happening. So
She's here with us. That's why.
I make peace with it,
Yes.
and I just kind of work beyond that because nobody wants to hand in a sloppy first draft.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Okay. So speaking of, taking some time and dealing with feedback, today we're going to talk about what to do with notes. So first of all, like, what is a note? Where does it come from? So a note is either a critique or a feedback or judging notes if you've submitted to a contest or a competition. If you're working with a screenwriting coach, some of you are out there with mentors or coaches that you submit stuff to, and they're going to send you notes or feedback. So what do you do with that? you know, and what is the purpose of a note, and how seriously should you take it, or how should you shrug off some of them. So I'll just go with my example. I was working with a producer, and I pitched something. He gave me the green light to write it. I wrote it. He got the draft, and then he's like, there wasn't enough grit to the story, and there wasn't enough stakes. And so I had to totally retool it and give tougher, more complicated stakes to my character. And at first I was just like, ooh, I thought this was awesome, you know, and the comedy hit the right mark, but as far as the storyline and the stakes, it didn't hit it. So now I'm in the process of totally redesigning it. And
those are probably the hardest notes.
Yeah.
When you have ones like that where you're like, oh man, I'm going to undo all of these things, and you're changing, by doing that, you change either the tone, or that's stuff that's not like you're going to sit down and hammer that out in a weekend. No, like you're not going to do that. That's stuff where you have to process them, and you're thinking about it, and you're, well, what if this, or what if that? And then you bounce it off people to see if it lands with them. Like it's, those kind of notes are probably the hardest ones. So kudos to you getting after it.
Yeah. But I didn't shut down. I didn't be like, oh crap, you know, scrap that story and start from scratch. I'm going to keep plugging away at it. And bounce stuff off of both of you. And I'm like, are these good enough stakes? Does this make sense?
Right.
So, but that's one example. So, you know, share with everybody like an example of a note that you got. That did it work for you, or did it go over your head, or did you take some time to process?
I think notes, I didn't realize when I started writing that the editing process and the rewriting process was as much as what I thought it was. Like, my first notes came from Ken. You know, I had no idea this is the first script I've ever written. And even working through like a screenwriting instructor, like through Christine, it was much more like, these are the structures of your story, and have you thought about this? Whereas when you have a finished thing and they come back and they're like, here's my notes. And Ken was really, really, it was, you know, you're working with somebody when they can pull out the good, the bad, and the ugly, you know, like, and starting with the good is always a good way to, to let somebody know, like, you're not missing the mark totally, but you kind of are, in the nicest way. So his notes,
to people gently.
Right. And the other part is that, like, Ken knew I was a new writer, so he was not going to use verbiage that I would not understand. Until I got into it. And then you're like, oh, I'm figuring out what the format's supposed to look like. And so he was really, really good with understanding where I was at as a writer, as well as, you know, pushing the envelope a little bit more and asking good questions, I think is one of the best things that comes out of notes. Or, you know, like you were saying, you know, the stakes need to be higher. Like, you know that world, they might not know that world, but you know that world, and what would be the worst thing that could happen to that character? What would be something that's going to change the trajectory of what that emotional journey might be for that character? The biggest thing of getting notes is knowing where it's coming from and what the goal of whatever that person that's giving you notes is, and your goal in taking it.
Right.
So I don't know if I really answered that really well, but like understanding the bigger process, like what you were saying, where's the note coming from and what is their connection to that story? So like a contest reader, you know, those contest readers can be like, you can get a very different, I've had a script come back, like I had notes that were literally like you could throw a dart at a dartboard, it was going all different places. I was like, did they all read the same script? Like, did I submit 3 different scripts here? Like, you know what I mean? So sometimes just knowing where that's coming from. And again, the best notes are the ones that they ask questions back. Like, tell me more about what you were trying to go for with this character, that arc, which Ken was really, really good at.
So I think I shared my very first experience with notes was when I sent my first script that was written in Word doc off to an indie producer. And he was like, read Save the Cat. Yes. And which was so helpful. And I did do that. And then I got my next draft ready, and I got into a writer's group, and their note, oh my goodness, everyone needs to experience I feel like it's a step of progression in writing. You need to get feedback, whether it's in a writer's group or sending it off to producer manager, who obviously you're not going to have a manager if you haven't already gone through the process of getting notes from other people. But it was, first of all, an ego check, you know, because you have to learn.
It really is.
Yes, you have to take, you know, you get a little stab and be like, okay, I can handle this. And then realize people are onto something. Like if they're noticing something in your story, my niece, well, she's an amazing writer. And we were both laughing about, I don't know if you remember with your early drafts, how you kind of knew there'd be a problem, but you're like, maybe they won't notice the problem. And of course, that's the first note. And you're like, okay, trust your gut. When you're feeling there's a problem in your script, it's not going to just disappear for other people. That was one of the things, is there's no sliding by those things that your gut's telling you are wrong. So I definitely learned a lot about listening to your gut by the feedback you get from people.
It's a different point of view, and you need that. You need everybody, because you're not, unless you're writing a very specific film for a very specific age group. Like if you're like, hey, this is a film for women over 60, you're not going to have a 30-year-old read your script to get notes on it, because it's going to be very different contextually. But you should have, again, like I remember in one of my scripts, I said something about, I said cell phone. I kept calling it a cell phone instead of calling it just a phone. And they're like, nobody calls a cell phone anymore. They call it their phone. And I was like, I didn't even think about that. They're like, it dates the script. I was like, okay. Like something just as small as that, that you wouldn't even think twice about, because that has nothing to do with the story. No. But that reader was bumping on it because she's like, like I'm a 20-year-old. We don't call a cell phones anymore. It's a phone. Yeah.
And the luckiest thing I have is I have my granddaughters who every time I've gotten a note like that, they're the first ones. I'm like, okay, what? Like who? Like who's an influencer? That, because even now, okay, I'll probably cut this out, but even to me, the Kardashians are not who, like the generation of my grandchildren. That's not who's influencing them. So, but for me, I'd be like, oh, an influencer, Kardashians. It's like, no. My granddaughters were like, no, and they gave me some name I can't pronounce. Okay. So that's been one of the notes that I'm realizing that I've gotten a couple times, is like, oh yeah, little things like cell phone or flat screen. You know, what do you call a television on a wall? I don't know. People don't even, they wouldn't even probably watch a show anymore hardly on their television. They're watching them on their smartphones and so yeah, just little things like that. Like, so the notes, like you said, you got to get notes from the people of the ages that might be watching this movie or show. But
so let's go back to what you said about, you know, a problem area in your script. And I think having somebody read it is like the best way. You know that there might be a problem in this particular portion of your script, but you have to put it out there to bounce it off of somebody if they also find it's a problem. And if you have 3 people read it and they all come back and say, yeah, page 12 is a little screwy. Right. Well, then pay attention to page 12. And maybe you thought page 18 was the one that had the problem, but they're all saying page 12 is. And so if you go back and fix page 12, then naturally page 18 will kind of fix itself. So it is important for you to get your work out there and have other people read it. Who gives us these notes? And first of all, you know, I want everybody to know that notes is just part of the business.
Oh, 100%.
Right. Oh, yeah. And you know, everybody gets notes, whether you like it or not. But you should like it.
It's usually a good sign if you're getting notes.
Right.
Actually,
and you were talking about being, you know, having a big ego. The people that think they don't need notes are the people that burn bridges in this business because you have to get notes. And you know, it's not going to be 100%. Even if it's the 20th draft, it's not going to be 100%. You're going to keep getting feedback depending on who you send it to.
And it's going to change wherever it goes.
Exactly. Yep. So, you know, we talked about having a critique group or a writer's group. We talked about submitting it to a contest. If you have representation, you obviously are sending it with your manager. Or if you're lucky enough to make a contact with somebody in the industry, so a producer, director, or even an actor might want to read your script. And I have found that some of the most unique notes that I've ever received are from actual talent, from actual actors. Because they are looking at it as an opportunity piece, right? Can I pull off this actor, or can I pull off this character that you're writing? And they will give you feedback like, you know, this scene wasn't believable enough, or this scene wasn't strong enough because I think character would have done X. So, think about that as an avenue to where you want to send your stuff. If you know someone in the acting world, even if they're not in LA, if they're, a stage actor, actors come at this with a different set of eyes.
And piggybacking off of that, if you've ever done a live script read, that's
really
really kind of what that's like. A notes immersion experience, and it's a live thing that you're seeing if dialogue is landing, or you're seeing how weird that you're like, I wrote that scene, that sounds so lame. Like you see it or you hear it in such a different way than what you're reading it.
Well, and you also realize how much an actor can make or break your
script.
Yeah.
You're like, wow, I need to punch up that dialogue a little bit more.
Great opportunity if you can have your script read by live read or by someone,
find a community theater in your community and just kind of reach out to them and maybe say, I'll buy you some pizza and some Pepsi if you can read. Yeah, if you can read 10 pages of my script and see if it's landing. So that's a great way to get it out there.
100%.
So let's talk about the note that you receive that is just like, where did this come from? Like it's either inappropriate, derogatory, or it's just so left field that you feel like, did they even read my script or were they reading somebody else's script? So how do you deal with a note like that?
Well, something came to mind, so while you guys think of, so I have a script that opened my eyes to a little bit of how people will take a character differently. So I had this woman who was a prostitute, and I was like thinking in my mind she wants a different life, because I'm thinking
this is your character
I'm like, in my mind, doesn't every prostitute want a different life? I didn't but a note came back that made me look at the perspective differently. Like, no, what if she why does she need a different life? Like, maybe this is a life that makes her happy. And I thought, I guess there are so many different ways. I mean, obviously I took the note and I tweaked it so that person knew why she wanted to have a different life. But it was a good note. It made me look at it differently. Like, why does she want a different life?
The best thing is about notes like that, the ones that seem like they come out of left field, that's usually a blind spot for yourself. Either personally, experientially, from a writer's place or whatever. It's usually always a blind spot. And sometimes you can be like, like you said, you just turn that and you're like, oh yeah, there might be people that want to do that. And sometimes we don't know what those blind spots are until somebody brings it to light to us. You don't know what you don't know unless you see the thing that you didn't know. But there can be some of that, but then there can also be that's not at all what the story was. It was probably somebody skimming and they did a thing and whatever, or they were looking for a very different kind of story than what you were offering. And sometimes, unfortunately, that can come from a badly written logline. Or a comparable project that you said this is like this, and then they're reading the script, they're like, this is nothing at all like what that project was. So there can be different reasons that you get that. What in the what was that? What was that? Like, this is not,
the F word.
Yeah, what the F word? Not that I would ever say that. I had a little bit. But so the blind spot, and then just what they came in with that expectation of what that script or that story was going to be.
Right. So if you say in your one-page synopsis and you're saying, well, this is like Die Hard, well, then it better be like Die Hard. It better not be a watered-down Keystone Cop version of Die Hard. Otherwise, they are going to give you off-the-wall notes because you didn't hit the mark with their expectation.
Or if you were like, it's a Disney movie with Mai Tais. You know what I mean? They're like, this wasn't the best script ever. There's a lot of different ways that you do have to make sure that when they come in, which is another reason, and I'm just going to add this little tag on there, when you do send a script out to get notes, even if it's from your buddy friends, like I might have been talking about something, but they know 3 of the things, like when I send that script, hey, thanks so much for taking a look. The script attached, here's the quick log line, here's what the genre is, here's kind of a comparable, and sometimes you'll ask them very specifically what you're looking for in getting those notes.
So that brings me to the next part of this whole thing about what to do with notes. So how do you get the most out of your notes experience, right? You're going to send it off, especially if you're sending it off to a peer writer or a writer's group, or even if it's a screenwriting coach that you're paying someone to give you notes. Well, to get the most bang for your buck, you should send along some questions with your
That's a good
script.
idea.
And so here's some examples of questions that I thought of, like, did the end of Act 2 keep you engaged? Did the dialogue between character A and character B make you laugh?
Yeah.
Especially if you're trying to, write some good jokes in there.
Right.
Did the turmoil for character A seem believable? Did the action scene on page X seem plausible? What did you like or dislike about the main character? That kind of stuff.
Those are amazing
Great
questions. Like
yes.
that's something to add as a resource to, everybody that's watching, because sometimes you don't even know the question to ask.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't even know what this part of my story is, but like those give you words to help a reader be able to help you formulate.
Yeah.
Again, a lot of it is like where you're at in your writing journey with receiving notes and understanding the verbiage behind those and not taking offense to them if you're not understanding the whole process yet.
Exactly.
So for me anyway, and I don't know if it's the same for both of you, Act 2 is so
it's where every script goes to die for a certain period of time.
Act 1 is the intro. You're building the world. You're building the characters. You're building the obstacles. And then Act 2 is kind of like you're schlubbing along until you get to the big climax in Act 3. So for me, I always want to know if the reader was able to actually sink their teeth into Act 2.
Right.
And did I keep them engaged, or did I lose them along the way? And where did I lose you? And what did I do to lose you?
Yep.
So,
Great.
Yeah, Act 2 can be a tough one. So I think, okay, so for me, I've done this before where you have areas you're not sure of, and you specifically ask people those questions. Like, one instance that I was thinking of it was the first time I ever tried to put an accent into one of my characters.
Oh,
yeah. And I specifically asked, my manager, I'm like, did that work? Because I was so unsure of it. I think we've done that for each other before. I know I've sent mine to you guys before, like, please look for these things. So that's super good.
Or if you just need the editing draft of like, you know what, they might not like these parts of your stories, but you're like, I'm just looking for grammar, man. Like, give me all the grammar. Is all of the grammar okay?
Is all my
yes, the typos and the punctuation.
Did I get rid of all the ing words?
Yes. Oh, yes. What are those called? Garums?
I don't know. I just know
ing and ly words.
Yeah. He runs instead of he's running.
Yep. That's and I don't know where I got that note. I read that note somewhere. I think I got that off Twitter, and I'm like, okay, I don't know why.
It takes so much space off of your script. It's amazing.
It does.
It just makes it way tighter.
And when you realize the more you want to be in the moment of it, because screenwriting is always about it's happening right now. It makes sense. Okay, everything. I don't know. Things start to fall into place the more you.
My friend Chris is like so good at nailing those things. I always know, like, I'm like, okay, when I get to that certain place, I'm like, I know exactly where I'm sending that script. And that's another thing too, is having this tribe of people, of knowing like who you're looking for. Like, I have one screenwriter that's a friend of mine that's a person of color, and I'm like, if you're writing diversity in your script, white girl from the Midwest, I'm gonna need to make sure I get eyes on that if that's going in the world, because we're representing a character that I might not have zero ideas of what that perspective, and I want to make sure that you get that right, which is probably one of the hardest things to do when you get back notes and you're like, I literally have no idea what you mean right now, and that's when you hop on a Zoom and you're like, you need to talk me through this.
Tell me what's going on.
Because talking about those experiences is going to help your script 100% if it's something that you have not experienced before.
So something I just thought of, so we're talking about when you send to your peers, I do think it's way less likely that you're going to get those out from left field notes. It's when you send it off to a competition or someone who just has no idea who you are. That's where sometimes you get those like your notes like, okay, I don't know what they're talking about, and I feel strongly about this thing, and I'm going to stay with it. But I have had in my writers groups and with like manager and consultant where I've had to argue when you feel strongly about something and you don't have to take every note and be like, okay, I'm throwing that out of my script. Sometimes you just need to explain why it's important and convince. And I've had that. I've won over a couple things by just explaining it. And it's like, oh, okay, just then you have to fix it in the script so that it comes across. But so
Right.
yeah, every note isn't like you have to take it out.
No.
And, you know.
So like, what if you're testing a new genre? So let's say, you know, I'm a comedy writer, but I'm wanting to write something supernatural, right? So, you know, when you sent May's story to me to read, it was, you know,
different.
Good to give you a note like, here's where I saw the supernatural world open up.
Yeah.
Where it went from the, you know, contemporary realism to the supernatural. And then did I nail it? Did you nail it? Did I meet what you were looking for and that kind of thing? So I think it's really, really important that if you cross over to something brand new to you anyway.
Yeah. And those are great notes, by the way. Thank you.
Send them out
So good.
and get the notes, you know? Yeah.
And you're right, especially if you're switching genre. It's so scary. Like, sci-fi scares me. I know that you've been doing some sci-fi. I'm like,
sci-fi writing and world building is that is a muscle. If you've never done it, it takes a while to build. And believe me, I'm not an expert at it at all, but it came from a lot of getting really good notes and people asking good questions. You know, like one of your notes in my sci-fi thing, you were like, I do not understand this world and I need to by this page. Yeah. And that was super huge. So I was like, how do we create this world without when you're visually, you're going to be able to see it, but on the page, how do you write that?
And
it was definitely tricky. And every genre's going to have those little things. Yeah. It's going to be the thing you want to make sure you get right. And knowing that your reader is going to be looking for that is important.
Yeah. So I think my advice for anybody out there that's getting notes for the first time, you know, again, you'll be sitting by your laptop or sitting by your phone. When am I going to get that?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
You could be waiting for a month. Don't wait.
Or two. Or three.
And then it comes, and then it's like, you know, it's either a paragraph of here's my notes because they're either not jazzed by it whatsoever, or it was just so phenomenal that they have minimal notes for you, or you're going to get the 30-page attachment of here's everything where I thought it could use some work, and then it's like, but take a breath, and if you need to, just walk away. Just walk away from it. You know, nobody says you have to read that right then and there.
But I'm that person now.
Yeah.
Oh man, if that email comes in, I'm like, I'm like scrolling. I don't have my glasses. I'm holding my phone up here. Like, I just really want to see what this says so bad. I'm like zooming in.
And then 15 minutes later, it's like,
no. Or you drive out of there, like you peel out.
I'm the worst writer ever.
Yeah. And so that's valid though. Like you can have emotion with receiving notes because it's such a solitary thing that you're the only one that's going to feel that emotion unless you've written it with a co-writer. And we've gotten notes back from when I was working with co-writers, and you know, one of us would feel very strongly about one of those notes, and the other was like, okay, we gotta fix that. Where the other one's like, no, we're not doing that. And I'm like, okay, I guess we're not doing that.
Right.
So you know, it is an emotional thing when you get notes because you're going to be emotional about your writing. Like you should be passionate about your writing. You're going to want to care. You're not going to be like, well, I guess we'll go fix that. Like that's not what writing is about. Like you should be feeling so passionate about your project and that you're going to want to tweak it and twirl it and have it evolve into the best thing that you could possibly make it, knowing that it's probably never going to be done. Somebody will always have a note. Yeah. Wherever it lands, somebody will have a note. Somebody will have something to say about it.
Yeah.
And I think something I'm still learning this, and this is part of maybe what some of my frustration has come from in the past is, unless you're on a deadline, it is just your story. Even if you've got some amazing notes, and maybe there's some people really waiting for that breakout script that you're gonna write. But when you're not getting paid, it is just your journey, and I have to remind myself that a lot. Like, the anxiety, get rid of it. Like, okay, so I need to rewrite this. I need to restructure that. Okay, it's just part of this journey. And make it more of an enjoyable journey, you know, not like be so angry or frustrated or like, okay, I suck, or I don't know. I'm just getting more into this rhythm, maybe that comes from
experience
and lots of failure and lots of no, you know, I don't know. It's not failure.
You have to reframe the thing.
Yes.
Like just reframe what that note is, and it's not failure as in you should not do that anymore. It's the fail forward thing, which is reframing.
Right.
I'm just going to continue to make this better.
Just keep going.
Yeah, and you've said that so often. This is this is a game of just not quitting.
Yes.
Like,
right.
Go.
But I have to remind myself obviously all the time that just keep at it, and notes are good. If someone's giving you notes, that means something about your script is worth reading, because and if they're still giving you notes after a few scripts, there's something about you that they like in your writing. And so, because I feel like it's when nobody wants to give you notes anymore. That's the sign you might want to look for a different career. When people are like, oh, no.
So there's something that you have mentioned a couple of times, because you write in so many different ways. So short stories, scripts, novels, ghostwriting, like all of these kind of different mediums. Is that what it is? Sometimes people are really amazing at writing in one medium, but they might be writing that certain story in a different one. So one of the things we're seeing a lot of people happen in the script world, if their script just doesn't seem like it's advancing in anything, like flip that into in a little novel or a novella or a graphic novel, or something that you can really pull out what you loved about that story, and that's writing. And that doesn't mean that story had to die in the script. That just means this is the next evolution of it. And then when somebody's like, "Whoa, we want to publish it," and they're like, "Well, I got a script too," it's just going to make that story that much better. Yeah. So you can if it seems like the notes that keep coming back and that script doesn't seem to advance either in a contest or with any kind of production, or you just feel like it's a dead end, but you love that story, flip it into something else, and then you're going to send it up for more notes in that one.
Write a different version of it in a different medium.
Yeah.
And so just recently, I just watched Tyler Perry did he wrote a passion script. That was a script he wrote 21 years ago, and just put it away in a drawer. And now look at he was able to make his passion script that he did 21 years ago. So something that you're writing now may not be for the market, or you may not have the connections yet to have it made, but you never know.
Right. Well, and another thing to think about is, like, if you feel like, okay, you wrote something, you did get back the 30 pages worth of notes, and you're muddling through, and you're to page 28, and you're thinking, okay, I'm almost there, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, but then you're in this mode of spinning your wheels, and you're spinning, and you're spinning, and you can't get any traction because you just can't. You've hit a dead end or writer's block or whatever you want to call it. So what I do is I just kind of tuck it to the side and I watch shows. I just visually watch stuff. Yeah. And then by watching a movie or, a TV series or something, that flow will come back. Yeah. So if you ever hit that, wall that you're spinning your wheels with notes, what do I do with this? Or it's overwhelming. Because there's so many notes. Where do I begin? And no one says you have to begin from page 1.
Good point. That's a really, really good point. Like when you get the 30 pages of notes, you're like, here's me. I'm like, what's the easiest thing I can fix right now? I literally am like, what is the typo on page 30? Excellent. I will go fix that. You know what I mean?
Start there.
Like, look through what each one of those notes are, and when you do get a big chunk of notes like that, some of it's grammar, some of it's plot stuff, some of it's dialect, like figure out the thing that you're like, okay, what is going to make me feel a little bit better about the script if I can invest another hour into putting these notes in. And you don't have to do all the notes in one shot. Like I said, sometimes you're going to get through them and you're going to be like, well, that was a complete waste of time. I am going to just undo. Another practical thing with notes is, and I know I think you both have done this, where you have different versions of that script with the different types of notes that you've gotten.
Yeah.
So when you're editing that from a practical thing here, don't go into your main final draft software program and make all of those notes that you might not agree with, but your script is not that same version of it. So keep a clean, it's not really a clean version, like your original version, and then create another document that you're going to be doing those notes in, because you might have another person be like, I think that there should be another character in it, and you're like, well, that was 2 drafts ago. Exactly. I took a character out. And you're going to go back to that, and you're not going to have to rewrite stuff that had already been in there. So from a practical standpoint, creating a separate document.
Yes.
With
I do that every time.
Yep. Yeah. So that you're not muddying up kind of your original document.
Yeah.
then you can see your growth.
Mhm.
Or yeah.
Yeah.
you can-
Just remember to save it in a different file.
Yeah.
Speaking from experience here.
What popped into my head is like for my script Songbird. So to write a PG version of it was one of my
Oh,
notes.
that's interesting. Yeah.
Right?
So
So-
that's a page one rewrite. That's going through kind of
So
all the things.
We love the characters, we love the story, but the opening scene was a little too harsh for us. Can you tone it down? And can you drop off all the, in other
Right.
words, can you make it a PG?
That is a full
So I
script.
saved it as Songbird PG. That's
Nice.
the name of the file, right?
There you
So
go.
yeah, I have done different versions of my scripts.
Yeah.
Right.
I think I should have a PG version of all of my scripts.
Yeah. Honestly.
Yeah.
And
It's not a bad idea.
Yeah. And it'll grow you as a writer too.
So give me an example of the best note that you've ever gotten.
I think one of the best notes that I have gotten is when in my first script, writing it as a military script. One of the best notes that I got, and it's like a note and a compliment, I guess, at the same time, was like the authenticity of the voice. Like, you know this world. There was some way that you wrote that we knew as a reader that you knew that world.
Yeah.
And so if it seems like you're getting a note that's like, I don't really feel like you really know this world or something like that, the authenticity piece is like,
It's not hitting.
yeah, something doesn't seem right. And oftentimes it's because the reader knows something about that world. They're like, whoa, they totally jacked that up. Like, for military people, we watch military shows or movies, we're like, oh my gosh, who was a military consultant on that one? Because they totally missed the boat there. But like, that's kind of like that little magic thing that's in there when it's authentic. And so, like, if you get a note about the authenticity of a scene or a place, like if you've never been to a place and you're trying to describe it, that doesn't mean go fly there, even though Paris would be amazing right now.
Do your research.
Do your research. Like,
Yeah.
the Google machine is an amazing machine.
Right.
Like, YouTube and Google, and you have so many resources at your fingertips now to make your place, your voice, or whatever you want to call it, in that script very authentic. So I would probably say that was one of my favorite notes that I've gotten, as well as when it wasn't landing. And I'll come back to the diversity piece. I had a character in one of my scripts that was a Black woman, and I had a Black woman say, that is not at all what she would say. So, that piece of the authenticity of the voice is probably one of the best notes, and that's the stuff that's gold, So
I'd say that was my favorite note too. Would be very similar to, it was an authenticity note from a judge on a screenplay competition, and just getting that person saying, I can tell that this is someone who's well versed in this world, and then the compliment was that how I was able to turn the comedy on its head, like the things that people make fun of people in this world, I was able to flip it on its head and I was like, that was like a super, I don't know, that made me feel so good.
The Book of Morgan.
Yes,
I
Book of
love
Morgan.
that. That was so well written, the way
Yes,
that you wrote that
I
culture.
need to I seriously want to meet that judge one day. I called you out in episode 2.
Oh.
I want to meet you one day because I've gone back to read those notes so many times. Whenever I get discouraged or bummed out, I'm like, oh, I need to like blow these up into a poster.
Yeah. So that's the other part of notes, that sometimes we feel like notes means, something needs to be changed, but again, coming back to people that give you good notes. They also give you the good stuff that you did get right.
Yeah.
Like, make sure you put as much
emphasis on that.
And reread those ones just as much as you reread the ones that you are wanting to change.
Yes.
That's good.
The best note that I ever got was someone said, I wish I would have known this person in real life.
Oh my gosh, that's a
I
good
wanted
one.
to know what this character was going to do next.
Nice.
Like, how was she going to live the rest of her life? I wish I
Nice.
had known her in real life.
Nice.
So yeah.
Good notes.
That's fantastic.
So much, I don't know, so much growth comes from being brave enough to share your scripts.
Yeah.
And take a little ego check and
Yes.
take some notes.
Swallow a chill pill and just get ready to read those notes.
Well, you made it through another episode. Thanks for joining in. For more information on our podcast and videos, be sure to check out our Facebook page with the same title, Faith, Final Drafts, and the F Word. This episode of Faith, Final Drafts, and the F Word was filmed and recorded on a small island located in southeastern Wisconsin.